This is the Amazing Teacher Podcast with Sam Rangel, episode number 3.
Welcome to the Amazing Teacher Podcast, where we sit down with amazing teachers and pick their brains for tips, strategies, and ideas that you can take into your classroom and be amazing. Now, here's your host, Sam Rangel.
Welcome, amazing teachers. This is Sam from SuccessInTheClassroom.com, and I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the 3rd episode of the Amazing Teacher Podcast. I hope you've been inspired by the last 2 episodes. I know I have. Today, I'm so excited about sharing this episode with you. I reached out to Rebecca Mieliwocki, who is the 2012 National Teacher of the Year, and I had a great phone conversation with her. We spoke about how she became a teacher and how she became noted for the National Teacher of the Year award. And yes, I asked her the question that I know she's been asked 100 times, what was it like to meet the president? And that was cool. But more than that, I was so inspired by our conversation that I even used some of her advice with one of my students the very next day, and it was amazing. Listen for when she shares about giving students another tomorrow. That is so powerful. Also, she talks about a teacher with a shovel. Listen for that. I believe that we all need to be teachers with a shovel, and you'll know what I mean when you hear it. I have to apologize, however, for the audio quality, and that's on me. I had the recording settings wrong when we were having the interview, so it's not as clear as I'd like it to be, and I spent the last week and a half trying to fix it and make it the best quality I can, but unfortunately it's just not the way I want it to come out. So bear with me, because I know even though the quality is not as great, it was one of the most amazing conversations that I've ever had with a teacher, and I know you'll find some great value out of this podcast. So let's get into the interview with Rebecca Mieliwocki. All right, ready? Here we go. Today, I'm happy to have the 2012 National Teacher of the Year, Rebecca Mieliwocki, on the podcast with me. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me. It really means a lot to me, and I know the listeners will find a lot of great value from this interview.
Well, I'm excited to help out and offer whatever support and advice I can.
Oh, well, thank you. But before we begin, though, before we get into the tips and strategies, I want to know a little bit more about you, how you got into teaching, a little bit about your journey as a teacher, and how you became to get the award for National Teacher of the Year. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Absolutely. I didn't start out to be a teacher. I actually was headed to law school, and after a couple of detours into the world of publishing, and then, if you can believe it, into celebrity floral design, I kind of hit a wall and wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. I had ruled out law school. I had decided publishing wasn't exactly for me in the form that I was practicing, and I knew that floral design wasn't really utilizing all of my college degree, and so I finally sat down and made a list of all the things I wanted to do in my day and all the things that I never really wanted to do again at my job. Mm-hmm. And the list was, it made pretty evident that I was supposed to be a teacher, and the reason I'd been kind of denying that career path for myself was because both of my parents were public school teachers, and I just kind of thought I wanted to do something different, something better, something more interesting or profound or professional, and I hadn't been willing to see myself in that role. And it wasn't until I'd done several other things that I realized that really was the best job for me. It matched my skill set to my interests, to my capabilities, to my talents, and it just was the perfect fit. And as soon as I started the credential program and began training, it felt so easy and so natural. It felt like home, and I think there must be something in my DNA, as the daughter of 2 public school teachers, that just must be who I am. And so I started teaching in 1995. I taught high school English in the beginning, and I taught for 5 years before I stayed home for a couple to have my son. And when I went back to the classroom, the only openings that were available were middle school. And that's just not not how I saw myself at all as a middle school English teacher. But we were out of money, so my husband said, you'll be the custodian at the middle school if you need to. You got to get back to work. So I returned to the classroom, prepared to last not even the year. And within the first 5 minutes, I absolutely fell head over heels in love with middle schoolers. So that was about 11, 12 years ago, and I have been teaching 7th grade ever since. I have an incredible passion for not just the kids going through that span of time in their adolescence, but I also have a great joy and respect for my colleagues that I work with. You know, the mission of us together, working together to get better, to be reflective in our practice, to love kids and support them, and to help the school be a warm, welcoming place for all kids is really important to me. And I think that's actually what got me noticed as an educator. Is not only did it matter to me that my own professional practice was excellent, but I also cared about supporting the colleagues who were doing the same work I was doing. And it mattered to me that we were doing good work as a collective group. So I think it's a little bit of all of those things that got me noticed.
That is so interesting, because you're not the only person that I've spoken with who said that initially they didn't want to be a teacher. And I was in that same boat as well when I was subbing as a just to pay the bills, and I hated it because every day was a bad experience as a sub. And I couldn't teach high school because I looked too young, and elementary kids I just couldn't smile enough to make them happy.
Right.
So I was in middle school as a sub, and then I got my long-term position, which turned my life around. But it's interesting how, because all my career has been in middle school as well, and that's that time of life where the kids, I think, need that direction the most. I mean, this is the time where they're trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do in life, and I think that's where teachers can find a place where they can help, make an impact that's going to last forever with these kids. So we kind of connect in that way. That was nice.
I agree. I think kids in that middle phase are going through their greatest growth and development, and they're certainly on that kind of middle realm between moving out of childhood and into adolescence and trying on different personalities and attitudes and personas, and you have to give them the freedom and tons of latitude to try it all and to just be a supportive presence, that guide on the side that's a popular expression now, and not be judgmental, be open, be willing and understanding about whatever process they're going through, and to try to have as many laughs as possible, to give as many hugs as possible, to try to let them know that you're okay, and we're here with you. We have a lot of work to do academically. I have a lot of skills that I need to build into you, but ultimately you're here to figure out who you are, and that will carry you through high school. So I love middle school.
It's interesting how most teachers don't want to teach middle school, but once they're there, they realize what kind of impact they can make. And I really like what you said about making school a welcoming place for all kids. That, especially at that time of life, kids want to know that they can go to school and feel safe and feel welcome and feel approved. And I think that makes a difference in so many kids, especially those kids who are having a hard time at home.
Absolutely. And I think when you're a brand new teacher, you're so worried about just getting through your day and making sure that you're disseminating a product in your class that is accessible for kids. And it's not until you've been practicing for a while that you can relax into the role of figuring out, what do I have to offer my very brightest kids who are accelerated to the very, I don't want to say lowest, but the kids who are struggling academically, the kids who are struggling socially, the kids who stumble academically. You're not in a position to be upset or offended by someone's lack of development, but instead you can ask yourself, what do I have to offer every kind of kid who comes through my door? Because there is something I have to give to every kid. And I couldn't do that right away. In the very beginning, I was so worried about, oh my God, do I have the right lesson for today? And can I get through it in time? And will I finish? And will kids get anything from it? And you're not even really able to kind of separate in your mind the different groups of people. And after you've been at it a while, you realize that the lesson and what comes of it is its own entity. And then you as a practitioner and a professional and as a human have other gifts to offer kids whether they're your brightest or the kids who are struggling the most, or the kids that need a hug, or the kids that need some counseling, or the kids that need some remediation, or some very basic skill building, or even just work habits or organization, or just some place to be safe from other kids because they're having, difficulty. You just, as an adult in a middle school campus, you have so much to offer every kind of kid who comes through your door. And it's the moment that you kind of realize that you do have a lot to offer beyond the academics, that you become empowered in your role. And I've enjoyed kind of having that happen over the last, say, 7 or 10 years, is really kind of supercharging what I do outside of the curriculum and the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true, so true. That those first few years, teachers are just trying to survive, trying to make it through the year. But,
yes.
But you're right. There comes a time where they can make a greater difference, and especially these young, brand new teachers that's full of life, full of energy, full of save the world mentality. Imagine what they can do once they get those basic skills down.
Right.
Very true. Very true. I got to ask this question. I know it had nothing to do with education or anything, but I have to ask, and I know you've been asked this 100 times. What was it like to meet the president?
It was incredible. It was incredible. From a distance, I had admired him. I was fond of the speeches that he had given as he ran for president, and I really felt like he was somebody whose energy and belief system I could get behind as a leader of our country. I was really ready for a change in our political administration. I was ready for less bluster, more substance, and a more heartfelt approach to how we walked in the world. And so his way of being really spoke to me. And he also seemed like somebody that I would want to be friends with, that I could imagine in my dinner party circle, somebody I'd hang out with. And so when this started to happen for me, and I knew that the path led to the White House, I had read up on all these stories about people, very, very accomplished, famous people who had seen and done it all, tended to wither in the presence of the president. They would freak out, they would cry, they would pass out, they would get hysterical. And I said to my husband, I am not going to be that person. I feel like he's somebody I've known all my life, and I want to be me in his presence. I don't want to be freaked out. I don't want to be hyperventilating. And so I'm going to do everything I can to just keep it real. And as soon as I saw him, there's that moment where you see him in the White House, and he turns and looks at you, and there is a deer in the headlight moment. And for some people, that never ends. But for me, I snapped out of it really fast, and I walked right up to him, and we got along like we've known each other our whole lives. I teased him, he teased me back. I joshed with him. I kind of nudged his arm and hunched up on him like I would a colleague at school, and he gave it right back to me, and it was so easy and warm. Now, I have big sisters, and sisters and brothers are different. I always wanted a brother, and he was as if he'd been my big brother my whole life. We just got along so well. And I thought to myself, okay, this is just behind the scenes banter. And as soon as we go out on stage for the ceremony where he gives me the crystal apple and names me the National Teacher of the Year for 2012, it will be all business, it'll be all ceremony, and all of this fun and games will be over. Not so. The minute the cameras turned on and all that paparazzi was taking photos and it was on C-SPAN, the minute everything lit up, he continued it. He continued the repartee. He continued to make fun of me. He gave a wonderful speech and introduced me. And it was, I knew it was going to be the greatest day of my life. And it certainly lived up to that before we went out on stage together. But the way it continued all the way to the end, where he called me a goofball, where he complimented me as an educator, where he hugged me like a brother would, I just thought, this moment is exactly emblematic of who I am and who he is. We are good, warm, happy humans who enjoy our jobs. We enjoy the impact we make on the world. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take our job really, really seriously. And I just walked out on air. I walked out on air. He's the most real, genuine, warm, funny, caring person you've ever met. And it was the great honor of my life. It will be the highlight. I cannot top that moment.
Wow, that's so cool. I think every teacher, I guess, would like to get that kind of recognition. So having walked through that experience through you, I feel like I've been there too. Thanks.
Well, it was very real. The one thing that I appreciated from him taking away from it all was, you can kind of tell when people are phoning it in. When you've worked as an educator for a long time, you deal with thousands of kids and several thousand parents and lots of administrators and lots of politicians, and you can tell who's the real deal. And as the president talked to me about his favorite teachers, as he talked to me about why teachers mattered in his life, those were real stories, and those made a difference in his life. And he was the first person to say, I stand here today because of Mrs. Olson. I stand here today because of Mrs. O'Brien. He named the names, and he said the names of their classrooms. He means it. When he thinks teachers are important, he's telling the truth. They mattered in his life, and he's willing to fight for us. And I appreciated that about him.
That's so cool. I wonder if those teachers that he mentioned are dear to him because of their ability to teach the subject or their ability to connect with the student.
I think what he was sharing with me was that, we both confessed to each other that we were far more interested in being class clown than being class scholar. And he was appreciative of the fact that his teachers loved him for who he was and did not expect him to change his personality, but their expectation for his effort and achievement academically was always incredibly high. That they knew that as a person he was a work in progress, but as an academic he should reach high, and they pushed him. And that's what I try to give to my students, is that I'm hard on them, not because I think they can't do it, but because I think they can do it. And I'm there to make sure they can. I will be there to guide them, but I will make them reach. So, and I love them in all of their strangeness, in all of their humor, in all of their twerpiness, and all of their stumbles. I love them through it. That's what great teachers do. They take you for who you are, and they push you to be a better version of yourself.
Great advice. They take you for who you are. All right. Well, congratulations again on your amazing award. You are truly an amazing teacher, and you've got the award to prove it.
Thank you.
My first question, Rebecca, going back to what I want to get across on the podcast, is I know in your career you've met many amazing teachers just like yourself. What would you say are some of the qualities that you have found to be common among these amazing teachers?
I think the first thing you notice about a great teacher is that they actually do have a real love for kids. No matter what age group they're teaching, you can feel the affection and the warmth for kids oozing out of them. You can be strict, you can be soft, you can be easy, you can be lovable, but that warmth and that love for kids just pours out of you. So that's the first thing you notice. And kids notice that within the first 5 seconds of their time with you, from walking through the door. They can tell in an instant if you like kids and if you love your job. They know that. And so I think that's the first hallmark quality that I've noticed. The second quality I've noticed is that most teachers who are great see themselves as a work in progress. That they've got good material, they've got a ton of wisdom and great strategies, but they're willing to mix things up or change on the fly. If something's not working, they have the talent to stop doing what's not working and switch to something that might be working. And so that flexibility of pattern, of thought, of activity is always there. That's another hallmark of a great teacher. Another hallmark of a great teacher is the insistence that results matter. That it's one thing to like kids, and it's another thing to have a warm, welcoming classroom, but if ultimately that doesn't lead to any kid growing academically, it's all show. So there is that one thread that sews us all together, that we are driven to get results with our kids. So that's another hallmark of a great teacher. Another and final one is the ability to laugh at yourself, to laugh at kids, to laugh at the silliness of whatever happens that day, to have a sense of humor about the mission. I noticed that you don't necessarily have to be funny or a comedian, but you have to not take yourself so seriously. And those, I think, are the 4 qualities. And then, like I said, the work in progress piece, always open to new ideas, always open to learning, always open to, in the middle of a lesson that's not going well, let it go. and in the middle of doing something you think works, taking a kid's suggestion and letting that supercharge your lesson and taking it to the stratosphere. Like, good ideas can come from anywhere, at any time, at any place.
Good ideas can come from anywhere, anytime, any place. Amazing. Very, very good. The part about work in progress, and a lot of teachers think, well, I've been teaching for 20, 25 years. There's not too much I can learn. I think those amazing teachers are amazing because they keep on learning even after they've been in the classroom for so long.
Right. Absolutely. It's like a patchwork quilt that's never finished. You see a pretty piece of fabric and you go, ooh, that's neat. I got to add that to the quilt. And all of a sudden you have a quilt that's 3 miles long. That's what a teacher does. It's this constant rolling stream of good ideas and activities, and you never completely jettison all the good stuff that you know works. You never get rid of that stuff, but you're always open to adding. Like even today, I learned something new about how to use Dropbox to get a PDF of an article that I want to use with my kids, how to get that, kind of splashed out to all of them on their iPads. Like, I learned that new today, and I didn't know that yesterday, and it was exciting to me, and it was a little nervous-making because I didn't know exactly how to do it all perfectly, but I learned with my kids how to make that happen, and I'm a better teacher today than I was yesterday because I allowed that in.
Right, and so many teachers are afraid of technology right now. They're afraid to try new things, and but those teachers who are willing to give it a shot, even if they fall flat in their face, they're going to learn some, and it's going to make their class even better. Dropbox is one. Evernote is another app that I'm learning right now that's amazing. That I want to. There's so much that I still don't know about Evernote.
Right.
That I'm still learning, and but great new resources that are coming on through technology.
Right.
Yeah. Many new teachers struggle with classroom management. I know that when I'm talking to a new teacher, that seems to be the very first question that comes up. What do I do with that class? What advice would you give a new teacher who's struggling in the area of classroom management?
Well, there's a couple of different areas where you can struggle, and there's a couple of reasons why you can struggle. I think the first thing that teachers need to know is to have a clear set of policies and procedures in your classroom. And procedures are the way kids move around your room. They're the way you collect and disseminate paperwork. They're the way processes happen in class. Absent kids, kids coming in late, kids needing to leave to use the restroom. Those are all, procedures for how your room runs. And you have to have those laid out and codified before you begin teaching. And then as you teach kids those procedures, it takes a while to learn those. And for some kids, God bless them, it takes them all year to learn those things. And you will have kids in the last week of school try to, hand a paper into you physically and not realize that we've been using an inbox-outbox system for an entire year. And that can't bug you. That just has to be something that you constantly retrain and reteach kids, because procedures for how your room runs are just systems. So you shouldn't punish kids for not knowing systems. You should retrain and reteach systems. Now, the other thing is rules. Your classroom has to have a simple, elegant set of rules. It can't be 20 things. It really can't even be 10 things. It has to be about 2 or 3 things, like, kids will respect one another's space and intellectuality. Kids will keep their hands to themselves. Kids will, whatever it is. And when kids break those rules, then it's time to talk about discipline. But what happens is you get a lot of new teachers get flipped out or upset that kids are moving around the room when they shouldn't, or they're talking out of turn, or they're passing papers in at strange times and strange ways, and they get, physically sort of irritated by that, which is natural. It's normal. But oftentimes that irritation or upset goes to discipline, and it shouldn't. If it's a procedural issue, that's reteaching. Simply show the child again how you want something done. But if they've broken a rule, if they've put their hands on another kid, if they've cussed, if they've broken a school rule, then it's time for progressive discipline. So I think knowing the difference between the two is huge. And the other thing that new teachers need to do is they need to handle 99.9% of everything that comes up in their own classroom. No one is going to care about a discipline issue more than you. As a matter of fact, the farther the issue gets away from your classroom, the less people care about it. So a lot of times, new teachers get so irritated and so fed up that they haven't actually handled it in their classroom, that by the time they can't handle it anymore and they kick the kid out and they want the principal to throw the book at the kid, the principal's first question is, what have you done to modify this behavior? What have you done in your classroom to progressively make clear to this child that this behavior is unwanted and will not be tolerated? And the new teacher often says, well, I just tried to deal with it and then I couldn't handle it anymore and I had to kick him out. And that's when you have to learn the tough lesson, which is the expectation is that you will walk that road with the kid from the first infraction to hopefully never, the moment that you have to ask them to leave your room. And so what I would tell new teachers is handle virtually everything you can yourself in your classroom. Handle it swiftly. Handle it properly with as much respect as possible. So, for example, if a kid starts to sort of talk out of turn or get wiggly, you have to move and teach where they are. You have to stand right next to that kid and keep teaching your lesson. Maybe even put your hand on that kid's desk. Don't touch the kid, because kids often kind of freak out if you put your hand on their shoulder. They go, what? And they flip out. So instead, stand next to the kid, put your hand or your plan book or, I don't know, whatever, on their desk and let them know that you've taken up residency in their space. And usually that's enough to settle them. The next thing is if the kid doesn't settle down or if another problem crops up, is quickly move to wherever you're needed. And what I like to do is I squat down, because my kids are sort of littler than I am, just not by much, but they're littler. So I'll kind of squat down to their level, and sometimes I'll even get myself lower than they are, and I'll look up at them, and I'll say these 3 famous lines from a teaching guru named Rick Morris. He's out of San Diego, and he's awesome. He says to say to kids, what are you doing? What should you be doing? What are you going to do now? And the implication, sort of the subtle agreement is, I've caught you off task. I need you to admit that. I'd like you to say what it is you're supposed to be doing, and then I think it will become clear to you what it is I need you to be doing, and so I will ask that final question, what are you going to do now? Mm-hmm. And it's just in a 3-phrase conversation, the kid gets the gist of it, which is they're busted and they got to get back on track, and then move on. Keep teaching. So these little moments with your students who are misbehaving are very quick. They're very respectful, and nothing will stop you from getting through that lesson. So they have to learn that this behavior is not going to be something that stops or derails you or the class. That you are the master and they are the pupil, and you know how to handle this. And keep moving. Just keep that lesson moving. And the more packed you can fill that 45 or 52 or 90-minute lesson, the more content you have to deliver that's engaging for kids, the less chance you have that kids are going to act up or misbehave.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because you sound just like a middle school teacher. That's just exactly what my class, sounds like. They're just active, and you're right about the part about respect. Sometimes kids need to be, told be quiet or sit down or do this, but it's got to be done respectfully. You can't call them out. You can't embarrass them in front of their friends, or it's just going to backfire. It's going to look really ugly. And then the part that you can't let that bug you. You can't let those little things, especially
just keep moving. Yeah.
Right. Especially those little things about in the systems, the procedures. Mm-hmm. They don't get it the first time, and if you let it bug you and let it throw you over the edge, you're going to be frustrated the whole year.
Your whole year, right?
It's going to be tough for them to learn it, especially if they're sitting in the office all the time.
Yeah,
and then,
you have to figure out a way to unpin the emotion from the process of how your class runs. You have to completely unpin emotion from that and make that some part of your content. This is what I teach kids.
Yeah, that's exactly. Again, connecting with kids, but respectfully giving them that kind of discipline, that kind of correction, and it's all about respect. Really, you can accomplish so much if you do it respectfully. And
right. And I think that when kids see that you are focused on the lesson and on making sure kids are learning and that we're actively moving forward towards a learning goal, the biggest compliment I think they could give you is that, wow, in her class or in his class, she means business. We get a lot of work done. And they realize that that's how you, their teacher, show them respect. And that's how you, their teacher, actually show them that you love them. Is that you're not willing to let them derail a class because of misbehavior. They really do want you to be better than that and bigger than that. So you've got to figure out how to get better than that and bigger than that. So it really is just swatting away these distractions in as quickly and as respectfully a way as you can. Now, not every kid will toe the line. Some kids can't get it together. And in that case, as long as you've done step 1 and step 2, then step 3, it's natural for you to ask that child to leave the classroom or for that child to call home, him or herself, and get a parent on the phone so you can have a quick conversation. Well, it's very natural to go to that next step. But they need to know that, we really can't get away with very much with Mrs. Mieliwocki. We better just learn.
Right. Very true. Very, very true. So, little change of gears. Do you have a favorite quote that has inspired you as a teacher?
There are a couple pieces of advice that people gave me that aren't necessarily, like classic, famous quotes. But I just know that I've watched so many teachers, and I've been inspired by so many of my mentored teachers. And some of the things they tell me that sustain me is tomorrow's another day. And they say that for both me and for my students. That whatever went wrong today or whatever wasn't perfect today can always be made better tomorrow. And that we have many tomorrows together. And as long as tomorrow is better than today, it's worth coming back and giving another try. And so whenever I get down on myself because my lesson didn't go right, or whenever kids, got us off track, or whenever I didn't feel like I gave it my all, or for whatever reason it didn't come out the way I wanted, I'm never too hard on myself. I've gotten to a place where I'm able to say, you know what, I think tomorrow I can do this better. And then I'm really clear about sharing with my students when they mess up, or when they do an assignment and they don't do well. I always offer them tomorrow. I say, you know what, today wasn't your best day, but I have a feeling you have a great tomorrow in you, and I'm going to be here for it, and so are you, and aren't we lucky? I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night. And they at least feel like, okay, I blew it today, but I am welcome here tomorrow. I'm welcome with a fresh slate tomorrow. Even if I messed up real badly, she loves me enough to want me back here tomorrow. And I think that's a great gift you can give kids. And as a matter of fact, as the year goes on, when we get to second semester, I say to kids, we always have tomorrow, but our tomorrows are coming to a close. They get so sad and they get wistful and they think, oh my gosh, it's the end of our time with her. I really want to show her my best.
That is so awesome.
Because they start to realize, wow, you're a special person who's hung in with me this whole time, and it's about to be over, and I'm going to step up my game now, because they start to realize they're going to miss you. And they're not so sure that, they've had plenty of teachers. And if you, kind of do some of these things with kids that I've been talking about, you really separate yourself from the other teachers as someone who cares deeply about their development as a whole human being, and also academically in the content that you teach them. And you set yourself apart. And that becomes very rare and very prized.
Right.
And they begin to want to work for your love, affection, and respect. And I really see things right around February start to kick in. And I get out of kids things I never could have imagined from them in September.
One of the sad things about being a middle school teacher is that once they leave you, then they go to high school, and you're easily replaced as far as their favorite teacher. And so when I see a student, a former student, at the mall or at a restaurant, and they come back and say, "Hey, Mr. Rangel, remember me?" I can't remember the names, but it just feels good to know that, hey, I made a positive impact on them because of the concern and the work I put into making that year memorable. What I like what you said, and I'm going to use it tomorrow because I have a student right now that just needs to hear this. I have a feeling you have a great tomorrow in you. Yeah. I think that is awesome. The kids need to know that today's mistakes are going to be forgotten. tomorrow's going to
Yeah.
be a better day.
Yeah.
They need to see hope. They need to see some kind of redemption in the future. And a lot of times,
Absolutely.
new teachers, and even some veteran teachers, unfortunately, some of our more experienced teachers don't have that ability to forgive so quickly. And it's sad. It's sad for the kids. But
Yeah.
so that's one great lesson for new teachers to take away. Forgive easy, forget quickly, and always give them another tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does take time to cultivate a quality of mercy. And when you're a new teacher, you're so worried about just, getting it all done and doing it right, and you're under the microscope, and you really feel like it is do or die, or that, one false move and it's over. And you kind of can't help but transfer that. It's almost like a nursing mother. You transmit all of your, immunities, and you transfer sometimes some of your fears into your kids just by your own energy or your own fear or your own stress. And it's not until you've been at it a while then you realize how powerful you are and influence on your kids. And if you can give them that quality of mercy where, you have kids who dig themselves such a huge hole that they can't even see daylight out the top of the hole. They've got the lowest F in class. They haven't turned in an assignment for 3 months. They've just cratered in. And you still have to be there somewhere with a shovel saying, I'm still here and I'm going to help dig you back out. If you're ready, I'll grab a shovel. I'll help dig you out. I know that analogy is getting messed up there a little bit, but you know what I mean?
Not
you
at all.
have to know that you've never ditched them, that you are there the minute they say, I'm ready. You go, let's get to work. Let's do this.
What a great image, a teacher with a shovel. That's awesome. That's awesome. What would be one action that a new teacher can take tomorrow that would place him or her on that road to being amazing in the classroom?
I think one of the simple things that a teacher can do that would help them and help the kids is to find a way to weave one lesson to the next. Oftentimes we kind of do these piecemeal units where, okay, I know I'm teaching Islam, and then I'm going to go into Rome, and then I'm going to go into, and they just kind of box and compartmentalize the things they have to teach. And if they could do something like begin each day's lesson with a recap of yesterday, with a preview of today, and a preview of how it will tie to tomorrow, that really helps increase student achievement because it helps with retention of information. It helps kids see, why are we doing what we're doing? How does it connect to yesterday, and what does it matter for tomorrow? That helps the teacher pull together a thread through everything they do, and they should be able to answer that question. Yesterday we did X. Today we're doing Y because tomorrow we're going to need to do Z. If they can do that for themselves as a professional and thread together the lessons and convey that in a way that kids understand why it all fits and why it matters and how it's connected and how it's relevant, you kind of empower the learning and you take that to the next level. So that's something I would really encourage them to do. Even a simple recap of yesterday before they start today, that can increase retention by almost 50%.
That's interesting. That is, answered the question the kids always ask, especially in middle school. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
That could even be why you begin your lesson. That could be your warm-up is, here's today's why. And that's something you could ask kids at the end. That could be their ticket out is, kids, why? Why did today happen? What was today about? And that could be what they leave with. And, you give kids sort of that bracket for the period, and it helps them frame the knowledge and hang it on to things they already knew, which is what, brain research tells us works for kids, is that they have to take new data, new information and experiences, and they have to hang it on old ones that have already settled. And so if you can do that with kids, you're really building up their capacity to remember, their capacity to retain, and their capacity to utilize that knowledge for whatever you're going to ask them to do tomorrow.
That's great. I think that's awesome information. I think great advice for a new teacher. Like you said, a lot of time is just Okay, today's lesson is this. I'm going to chapter 2, chapter 3, but no connection. Very good. Very true. Very true.
I have a funny story to go with that. Is the way I utilize that in my classroom is on my board it says yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that's how I begin the classes. I start by saying yesterday we did X, today we're doing Y. So that's how I start every class. And so I've done it for long enough now that I had this kid, it's a couple of years ago now, but this kid who was just a terrorist. I mean, he just worked every last nerve that I had, and he was frequently out of his food, and he was always in trouble, and he never did his homework, and he was just a hot mess coming and going. And he got himself into some trouble during the lunch hour when the principal was out doing supervision, and so she had him stand next to her for almost the whole lunch because really that's as far as she trusted him to go. Mm-hmm. And then she was engaging him and talking to him about his day. She said, Jay, what are you doing in Mrs. Mieliwocki's class? And from out of nowhere, without any prompting from me, he rattled off what I had said earlier. And he said, well, yesterday we learned how to use transition to tie our ideas together. And today we learned how to use transitions not just in a paragraph, but between paragraphs. And tomorrow we're going to learn how to be more sophisticated with our transitions and bury them several sentences in. And the principal was gobsmacked. Her jaw dropped. Here's this kid who's a frequent flyer in the dean's office, all of a sudden having this high-level intellectual academic conversation with her about transitions. And she came to me later in the hallway and said, Mieliwocki, I don't know what you're doing with those kids, but I like it. And I was just laughing and laughing because here was something, tangible proof that something I was doing in my classroom was sinking in with kids. And it got just kind of squirt out in the best possible way in front of the principal and out of the mouth of a student. So I was in heaven that day.
That is funny. That is so cool. And it's amazing what kind of impact you have on the kids that you assume are not getting it. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would never expected him to be the one to rattle that off.
Well, is there anything else? Is there anything happening right now? Anything happening right now in your life that you're excited about? You want to share?
I'm in transition phase. You know, I've re-entered the classroom after this incredible year of recognition where I was on the road for a straight year. I traveled to 9 countries and 30 U.S. states. I met the president, the vice president, Bill Gates. I met everybody. I was at the table for nearly every interesting conversation on a national level and international level in education, and I find myself returning to the classroom. And much like when the space shuttle returns to Earth, re-entry is very, it's noisy, it's loud, there's a lot of shaking and rattling. The heat is intense, and I think some of my ceramic tiles are falling off. It's very challenging. It's a very challenging place. It was so much easier to talk about the work of teaching for a year than it is, I remember, to do the work. So I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to figure out what's next for me. I love kids and teaching. I love teachers more than almost all of it, and I feel really passionate about making sure that teachers that our voice is heard in the best possible way. I'm interested in elevating the profession so that we are seen as competent professionals who do the work that really knits together this country so tightly. It's so important. And so I'm just trying to figure out what's next for me. But in the meanwhile, I get to hang out with 170 12-year-olds, and I don't know if there's anything more fun on the planet than that. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, no, I got you there. 100, those are the best times in life when you're dealing with all those hormones raging and the bickering back and forth, and they're discovering each other, boys and girls. It's quite a time in their life, and it keeps you young. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. It keeps me young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll be young till I die if I keep this up.
So if people want to thank you for sharing your amazing insights, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter at Mrs. Mieliwocki, and so MRSMieliwocki. And you can always email me at my school. I'm at RebeccaMieliwocki at BurbankUSD.org. And I'm sure on your podcast or your website you'll have the spelling or something so they can get to me.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. We'll have all that information on the show notes so people can get in touch with you. And, again, thank you for all the great insights that you shared today in the podcast. Rebecca, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, really. Thank you so much for spending the time with me and letting me pick your brain.
You're welcome. It's been a real joy. Anytime I spend talking about kids and teachers with other teachers, I'm just completely filled up. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. So, listeners, I know you've received a lot of great information in this episode. Now it's up to you to take what you learned here and implement it into your classroom. So, until next time,
be amazing.
The Amazing Teacher Podcast is brought to you by SuccessInTheClassroom.com. Learn more about being an amazing teacher by visiting SuccessInTheClassroom.com or TheAmazingTeacher.com.